Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Entre colegas session, dialogues between behavioral health providers of Latine. We are very fortunate and I'm very glad to be joined today by Dr. Aida Jimenez, a friend, a colleague, a mentor, who will be speaking on the role of emotions in Latine mental health. As everyone keeps joining in, I encourage you to share through the chat where you're connecting from, your state or your organization, your role as a behavioral health provider, to get to know a bit about you. So thank you for joining us for this session. We may move on to the next slide, Dr. Jimenez. The one before that. Sorry. Yes. So we have simultaneous translation to Spanish today. We have simultaneous translation services with a group of excellent and skilled interpreters. Tenemos traducción simultánea en español para nuestros hispanohablantes. Para accesar la traducción a español, por favor presionar la pestaña de interpretación, que es ese círculo como un globo, y luego presionar español. Así podrá escuchar todo lo que se discuta hoy, lo que conversemos en español. So you may click the interpretation tab and then click Spanish if you wish to hear today's presentation in Spanish. And during today's webinar, the event is being recorded, and please make sure your computer speakers are turned on and up to hear today's presentation. And please make sure to maintain your microphone muted during the presentation. If you have a question for a speaker during the Q&A section, which we'll have, please raise your hand using the Zoom icon, and we will enable the microphone so you can speak and ask and address your questions. We'll also be sharing a copy of today's presentation in PDF format through the chat box. If we, by any chance, don't get to do that, we'll also have that available through our website later on with a recording of this session. And at the end of this session, we kindly ask you to please complete the evaluation. This evaluation is really important for us. It helps our funders know how we're doing our work, and it most importantly helps us know from you your opinions, your feedback, what other sessions and trainings you think will be useful in the future. And so we'll share a QR code at the end. The mission of our Hispanic and Latino Behavioral Health Center of Excellence is to advance and support the sustainability of behavioral health equity by promoting community-driven, culturally grounded, and person-centered prevention, intervention, multiple pathways to recovery, and recovery supports for diverse Hispanic and Latino communities. The Hispanic and Latino Behavioral Health Center of Excellence recognizes the complexities associated with gender and ethnic identification, as well as the right of all individuals to self-identify. The center uses the term Latine with the intention of both facilitating a fluent reading and pronunciation and supporting an inclusive and respectful language. Latine is a gender-neutral form of the word Latino that uses the letter E at the end, an idea native to the Spanish language. And as we'll be hoping to do some role plays, some breakout rooms, and group discussions, we'd like to remind everyone that this is a safe space for sharing, where you're encouraged open and honest communication. Also, like to highlight the aspects of being respectful to others, and others' approaches and experiences will come from different backgrounds and have unique perspectives. This is also a place to consult and collaborate in the means possible. So feel free to consult on clinical challenges and share your clinical achievements. This is a collaborative environment where we can all learn from each other. And please be cautious not to share any confidential or identifying information about participants, clients, or patients. Privacy is paramount for us. And so now I would like to welcome Dr. Aida Jimenez, and I will leave it up to her so she may be able to continue with today's sessions and today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think that information, I live in Puerto Rico. I'm a professor at the University of Puerto Rico, and I have dedicated my life to work with decreasing disparity in the mental health field. So I'm glad that I'm going to be here today and be able to share a little bit of my experience, and I hope that it is helpful to all of you. As Eric has mentioned before, my presentation is about the role of emotions in Latine mental health. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, you'll be able to become familiar with at least two therapeutic models that emphasize emotions. And we're also going to be able to identify and practice different techniques. We're going to concentrate in two specific techniques that processes emotions. And why is it that we really want to emphasize on emotion? Why is it that important? We are going through a change of paradigm, moving from cognitive to emotional, because now we're realizing that the emotions plays a critical point in navigating our social world, right? It's one of the most primitive layer of the brain, and it's a way of connecting the body and the mind. And also we have learned that it really helps and enhances memories, that because it's processed through the amygdala. So there is this connection between the brain and the way we act, right? And as in talking about memories, you might remember better or more those memories that have some very strong emotional context. And also, the emotion is a unique language in which the brain communicates through the body. So when you don't have words, when you cannot express your feelings, the body takes the floor. We say that in Spanish is that el cuerpo toma la palabra. And as I mentioned before, it is a sort of a paradigm shift, although we're still using a lot of CBT, but now we're emphasizing the emotion because we have realized that emotions really can change behaviors. Which field do you think is the ones that are using the most and it's exploiting the most the emotions? Anyone can just guess? Anybody can even say it in the chat or can raise their hand and say which field you think is using it? Education? Which one? Which else? One that is stronger. And that we all engage in it without even knowing it. Any other guess? Marketing, exactly. Advertisement, marketing, they're really, really strong. And they have found out that when you really, oh, wait a minute. When you really present images and you present stories, you make people move and you mobilize people to get to changes or to avoid specific behaviors, right? Like, you use fears to avoid smoking or other behaviors, right? And so why is it that in psychotherapy we're not using it widely? Why is it that in our field we tend to use more the cognitive instead of the emotions, when we know that emotion can definitely change behaviors? There is a YouTube that you can later on watch by yourself, and I think that it might be really, it's a very powerful one. But this is an example of an event that happened in 2017 when, after the Hurricane Maria hit the island of Puerto Rico, that almost 5,000 people died, and the governor was completely insensitive to the needs of our country. So the people they gathered into the Capitol and they put all their shoes, and it was such a powerful image that it really touched the emotions of the people. And because of that, emotions of indignation and of anger, the people of the country really protested the governor, and eventually they were able to remove this governor from Puerto Rico. So that's what a powerful emotion does, right? And beforehand, we used to think about emotion like good or bad emotions. Nowadays, we know that all emotions are important. And what they do, they are signals. They tell us, they inform us what is going on inside us and relationally, right? So these are relational themes. When we feel sad, it's related because we are constructed. We're human beings constructed socially. So it gives us information about what is going on between people, right? So if I'm sad, I know that the theme is related with loss. And when you're sad, you tend to cry, and the crying brings people together, and people are going to approach you because they want to connect and they want to help, right? So that by itself moves people into action. Anger is about goal frustration, or it's about unfairness. And what it does, it activates people to do things. Fear is about threat, and you mobilize yourself, you tend to survive, or you tend to move out of the situation if it's dangerous. And jealousy is about perceived displacement or betrayal. So every emotion is important because it gives us information and it activates us somehow. These are we have the field of emotions have talked about universal core emotions, and these are the emotions that have been expressed all around the world. And although it is universal, but the interpretation and how I make meaning of those emotions varies according to culture and context, right? So you might express it one way, but the way that you make sense of it, it has to do with your culture. So that's why contextualizing things and events and exploring with people what does it make sense to them and how they interpret it, it is important. So now it's not seen, emotion is not seen any longer as a primitive, irrational response. On the contrary, it is very adaptive. It really plays a critical role in the life of a couple. And it's basically the glue in romantic relationship. It's throughout the emotions that we help them to connect, that we help them reach out, that we help them process and heal. The two models of emotions that uses a lot of the emotion. In fact, the main part of the models is the emotion. It's emotion focused therapy developed and created by Les Greenberg with Sue Johnson. And then eventually Sue Johnson, they both from Canada. Eventually Sue Johnson created a different model using the previous one, but she added a mentality or a perspective on attachment. So it has an attachment framework, which is different from the Lee Greenberg. The Lee Greenberg model is used widely when you deal with individuals and also systemically, but also with CBT, you can add that emotional component. So both of these models that are focused on emotion come from a very experiential and humanistic perspective. That's why when you deal with emotion, you do have to experience it. You have to really feel it so you can really move on, right? And transform it if you have to. But if you don't feel it, it's nothing has to do with the rational, like, oh, what I think. No, it's how I feel it. How is my body expressing this so I can then move on? And it's a systemic theory also. It comes from a very postmodern perspective and includes different other models, theoretical models, and also includes the attachment theory that we were mentioning with Sue Johnson. This theoretical model is supported by a large body of empirical evidence, and you can see it with one member of the family has depression, or others with anxiety, addiction, PTSD, sexual dissatisfaction, eating disorder, and marital discord. This is just so give you an idea of how widely used is this model, and does it work? Does it really work? Well, all the meta-analyses that they have done says that definitely it's 70 to 73% of couples recovered from marital distress, and 90% had significant improvements after 10 or 12 sessions. So it definitely works. And in terms of relapse, does it really works relative to other approaches? It does. There's a couple of studies that compares CBT, couple therapy, with EFT, and they have found that it definitely works, and it stays and it stays longer in terms of the relapse. People after 2 years, they're still documenting that they feel good and that they have not a relapse. And it also has a component that has to do with the process of change. Like, what are those ingredients that are important that in both of these approaches, you definitely need to be aware of and use. So they are doing a lot of the studies and qualitative studies working on those processes of change. Like, if it's like the different kind of question, if it's reflection, if it's what is it that needs to be part of it. Even thought both of them, and mainly the EFT by Sue Johnson is manualized, but it has a lot of flexibility. It's not linear. You can go back and forth, but it is a map. This is another meta-analysis that shows that after 2 years, pre and post, the effect size, it was a very large effect size. So it really demonstrates, and you will have the references of both of these studies that reflects that both approaches are extremely efficient. Now, in terms of Spanish, even though it has been used in many, many countries and translated into Chinese, and people are being trained in different countries and different languages, we're still in the early stages around the world in terms of cultural adaptations. In fact, right now, this is the first study that is being conducted on EFT for Spanish-speaking countries. It's the first randomized clinical trial. They are currently being carried out in 5 countries: Spain, Mexico, Guatemala, Argentina, and Costa Rica. So it will be interesting to see what the outcomes comes, and the data is still being collected. And this was a partnership between the University of Navarra in Spain and Brigham Young University in the United States. There are participating 17 therapies that have been trained and certified as EFCT therapists, and they have 10 supervisors from 11 countries. It is inscribed in the clinical trial official register, and I wrote the number there so you can always reach to their site. So right now that is very promising. They also conducted other researchers conducted a study that was focusing, or basically trying to understand what was important and how the therapists could make recommendation on the adaptation of the EFT to better fit the cultures of the Spanish-speaking cultures. So this was an online questionnaire, and they reached out to 103 Spanish speakers, therapists in 12 different countries. It's a qualitative study. And the results, what it says is that the EFCT, it is really, really congruent, and it does fit the culture and model for the Latina population. For example, 3 of the points that they recognize and they acknowledge was that EFT values emotional and interpersonal closeness and connection, which is very consonant with our value of personalismo. Also, it values and prioritizes attachment bonds, which is very similar and consonant with our value of familismo. And also in the EFT intervention, which includes heightening, validation, use of metaphors, tracking a cycle, can help depathologize and calm and soothe intense interactions between the couple. So that is very also consonant. Instead of pathologizing, it helps and understand, and it externalizes the problem. The suggestions that these 103 participants gave in terms of the EFT and how to adapt it, it was related with these 3 points. One of them is to adapt interventions to emotionally engage Latino men, that we know that sometimes it's difficult, using a pro-social approach to machismo, right? So we have to include that perspective, and we have to see how we can really engage them and considering the concept of machismo. Develop a vocabulary or key EFT phrases and interventions that matches common Spanish dichos. We have so many dichos that are so powerful that we have to really fit and adapt it to use a language that our own patients bring and that is culturally appropriate for them. Adapt therapists' approach to accommodate the cultural value of respeto, that therapists are authority figures who will teach and direct. This approach, it comes, of course, from a very postmodern perspective, and postmodern perspective are really the mentality is we collaborate with you. You are the expert. You patients are the expert, and we're gonna help you find. So we see them as experts, and so that might be a little bit different for the Latino population, that they see us as people of power, right? So how we can both. How can we use that information to really help them navigate and see that, we know what we're doing, and you're going to be in a safe place because we know what we're doing, right? So some of the principle for emotional change is that the first thing that we have to do, according to these 2 models, that both models have they're very different, and they have a lot of different ways of entering. We're not going to talk about the different models. We're just going to focus on the emotional aspect of them, because they're both, it requires hours to really explain both models. But what it brings in terms of the principle of using the emotional is that you need to name the emotion. When you're talking with your patient, or both patients or the couple, you need to know exactly, is this about sadness? Is this about anger? Is this irritation? Is this happy? You know, what is the emotion? And help them identify and name that emotion, right? And also help and evoke and enact and somehow enact and evoke that emotion. Let them express that emotion in a very safe place. Also, sometimes when they're expressing their emotion, they might get extremely emotional. They might be going through trauma. So sometimes you need to help them also regulate that emotion by using self-soothing, by using relaxation, so they can then move on and then continue talking. But you need to regulate that before it escalates. Sometimes also after the people are really talking about their emotion, then you need to reflect, help them reflect on that emotion, and for them to give meaning, not you. You're not giving them meaning. You help them say, like, so what does this sadness mean to you? How what does it say when you're doing this and that? So what is the meaning that you give to these emotions that you're feeling right now, right? So they are the one that gives them meaning. And they also, and you help them learn and observe that pattern, and they can also learn to eventually, once they process that emotion, they learn to move on and then change, and sometimes change the narrative of that emotion. We also sometimes change emotions with another emotion, right? Like if you're hopeless, completely hopeless, and you feel really sad and you feel that you cannot do anything, sometimes we activate and we evoke anger, because anger helps them mobilize. A woman that is being a victim of domestic violence and feel that they cannot move and they cannot leave that situation. Sometimes we activate them, and then they anger to really say, like, I cannot take this anymore. I have to move. I have to look for it. We help them activate. So this is a way of changing one emotion with another emotion, right? So in terms of techniques, these are some of the techniques and some of the ways that we work with the emotion. There are many others, but these are the basic ones. It's the use of reflections, is reflecting, is validating an emotion. They're both different things. Reflecting is that you repeat exactly or very close to what the person said, right? You reflect what they said so they can feel that you're listening to them. With this, remember that this is a humanistic and experiential approach. So you really need to be attuned to the people. So one way of being attuned is saying, like, I'm listening, I'm hearing, this is what you say. Am I validating? Am I correct? Is it this what you're feeling? So I'm validating those emotions, and I'm heightening. Heightening means to enhance. It's really to highlight something in many different ways. You can use metaphors, you can use repetition of words, because you really highlight that thing that for you is important for them to really evoke that emotion. Evocative questions is like, because remember that this also, it's a way of connecting your body to the way that you feel, and for them to really be able to see how is this affecting your body. So right now, if I feel that my stomach hurts, I say, like, right now, what is it that you're feeling right now? Can you tell me what your stomach, if your stomach will be able to talk or say something, what would it say, right? So I'm also evoking questions that come from what I'm perceiving, the nonverbal of this person. Empathic conjunctions is an empathic interpretation. Conjunctions are interpretation are usually done considering an attachment perspective. Like so what I'm hearing is that you're feeling very, 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 very lonely, and it's like something in yourself that you cannot move on, and that you feel that, and so you keep going on, and so you validate how sad and how lonely they are, but then you're also interpreting. It seems like, you cannot move on, because you feel like if you move on, this person is going to be forgotten, and they're not going to be there for you anymore. So you're making an interpretation, and they might check in and say, like, yes, exactly, or they might say, no, that's not it, right? So they might correct you. And the enactment exercises, there are also other exercises that Greenberg brings, which are really interesting. One of them is like the empty chair that you can use for unfinished business, where the person is here and you put an empty chair and they bring that person, can be the mom, can be the spouse, can be anyone that they had unfinished business. And you provoke and you dig into the emotional piece of it and have that conversation, right? There's also dialogues between two chairs where the person is changes position and they usually talk about themselves. If they had a trauma, they go when they're 12 years old, and this old self is talking to the 12 years old, and they're resolving emotional issues also, right? These are some of them. So now what we're going to do is that we are going to do some role plays. I don't know if we should open for questions now or we should open for questions after the exercise, because a lot of your questions are going to come with the exercises, right? But these exercises, I think that all of you have the document, the paper that was given with exercises. These are some of the instruction. What I want you, because again, this is experiential and these are skills to be able to be competent. We're going to focus only on two of the skills. One of the skills is reflection. Even though it seems really easy, sometimes we forget to reflect exactly the way that the person is bringing it, right? So we have to really be in tune. And then the other one is heightening. Heightening has the component part of also validating. You have to validate to be able to enhance, right? So we're doing sort of three at the same time. And then we're going to check in. Because as I mentioned before, the being in tune with the person is extremely important for them to feel that you're there, that you're present, that you're mindful, that you're understanding, and that you're empathic, right? So what we're gonna do is that you're gonna be separate. All of you are gonna have a pair, and there's 6 exercises. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take turns. The first one of you is gonna be a therapist, and then the other one is gonna be the patient. And then the patient is gonna say the word, the phrase, the statement that is stated in that first one. And then the therapist is going to make sure that they do these 3. These are the 3 basic criterion. The first one is reflect back, the most point or the most important statement or the most important thing of the statement that the client has mentioned, right? You have to reflect. And then the second is you have to heighten the most important thing. And here comes the flexibility and the imagination of the therapist. The therapist really needs to get and to start thinking about metaphors, stories, details, whatever that helps the patient or the client really think about it in an imagery that is powerful and it's emotional. You remember the picture that I sent you, that I show you with the shoes, right? So you are gonna go really into this. You're gonna enhance that. It can be through repetition of words, can be metaphors, symbols, can be details, whatever. But that person, you're gonna really go into that person and you're gonna enhance it so that person can stop and say like, wow, right? And after you do those 2 things, then you're going to check in with the client to see if you were in target, if you're correct, or if you're really out of it, right? Because the check-in is important because now you're not assuming, you're checking in with that person, and it's very important what they have to say, right? So I'm gonna show you 3 different exercises and how does this look like if criterion 1, criteria 2, and criteria 3, how does it look like? So when you are in your separate rooms, you can then work with it, okay? So the first one of them is gonna be a client and the other one, the patient. And then the second one, they switch. The client is gonna be the therapist and so forth. So you can all have the experience of being the therapist and doing the work. So this is example 1. This client says, I identify immediately with this statement. What is the emotion? The emotion is sadness. It says, I really miss my partner. He traveled for a whole month and I only got to see him once. So there's sadness behind, right? So the therapist says, immediately the reflection, you really miss your partner. I'm checking back, right? He was gone for a very long time and your heart longed to see him. Here, the heart, this is the part of, you are you are really, really, really hurt, or you really, really, really miss him, right? So that's the heightening part. And then you check in. Do I have it right? Then the example number 2, the partner, it's irritated. I got that emotion. Nothing I ever do is enough to make my partner satisfied. So the therapist, it seems nothing you do is ever enough for your partner. Reflect. Now heighten. You give and you give and you give, but you see, you can extend it, you can repeat the words, but it's like filling an empty hole. Like, okay, so you're given that visual to this person, and you're evoking that emotion. Does that feel right? Checking in. And then the third example is sadness. I feel excluded by my own family. I come home from work and it is like she and the kids have their little club that I don't belong to. So the therapist does the reflect. When you come home, you don't feel a part of your own family. Reflect. Now, heighten. It is as if you are on the outside with your nose pressed on the window and they are cozy on the inside. That's a metaphor, right? And then, is that what it feels like? It's check in. So that's basically the exercise that we're gonna do now. So, Eric, I will pass the microphone to you. If there's
Yes.
any question.
Thank you. So everyone, I've shared through the chat a document with the exercises for the practice and for the role plays. If you're not able to download it through the chat, you can also go to the resources tab on Zoom, and you should be able to find that exercises document there. I've also shared the slides, which have these instructions and these examples if you need to do so. Once you downloaded that, and I'm going to give everyone a minute to be able to download that, we'll do breakout rooms in pairs. Is that right, Aida?
Yeah.
Yes.
If there's not enough room, then you can put 3 or whatever. That's fine, but they should be able to switch.
Okay. So we'll hopefully we'll set it up so it's in pairs of 2s. There might be 1 or 2. There's 3, but we'll go ahead and do that shortly. So let me. Okay, I don't see anything down there. Where is gonna find it? Yeah. So if you're not able to find it in the chat, which a document that says exercises, you may go to your resources button on the Zoom panel, and there you should be able to find the exercise.
And let me emphasize something also, considering the Latino experience. It is important, again, when you do these exercises and you use the metaphors or short stories or whatever, to really consider the culture and the people that you're working with. You can definitely add and adapt it to the population that you're working with. Okay. But I know that in Puerto Rico we use a lot of dichos, so we use that as a way of changing and of touching people's hearts.
And so after, I'm going to be assigning the people to our breakout rooms. We'll have, I'm looking at the time, so we'll assign some 10 to 15 minutes each, and then we'll come back and dialogue about those exercises. And you should have received a button to join one of the rooms. And you may click that at this time. If you're not comfortable joining our room right now, we'll wait here for the other attendees. All right, so I think we can give them another 4 minutes before we bring them back.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. There's some that weren't able to log into a group, but we'll have I'm sure some of them I see are in a group together and maybe can bring some useful questions or feedback.
Perfect.
So we're back. Very good, as we're back. If you want, we want to start maybe a dialogue conversation with those who were in their rooms I'm sorry for anyone who wasn't assigned to one. Some technical issues, some may have not been able to join, maybe from their device and such. But I hope you had the chance to look at the questions and the exercises, and we can address any questions you may have now. If you do want to address a question, either write it in through the chat or preferably raise your hand, and I will enable your microphone so you can address questions, add any comments, and share your thoughts around either the presentation or the exercise itself.
Yeah, that would be great. Eric, I cannot turn off the rooms. I have it. I don't know if you can see it. It has all the rooms. If it's not projected, that's fine. But yeah, I would love to hear from all of you to see what was it easy? Was it hard? You know, what was your experience with the exercises? Should I turn off the screen and share? Oh, okay, I got it. Yes, turn it off. Okay, great.
Let me make sure everyone is back in. So we have two attendees who are have a question. So I'll ask Sira Burke. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I'm allowing your microphone so you may be able to address the question.
I wasn't asking a question. I was giving feedback. I thought that it was really interesting and easy to use. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Anna Irizarry, and it was really nice. And so it's an easy tool, and I'm glad that, we were able to put it to practice.
Wonderful. I'm glad. Thank you, Sita.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Someone else? Alba.
It was really fun. It was really helpful to kind of like be guided and just a reminder of like what we do every day. But I think for me, what was really different was the heightening part, especially when working with our Latinx community. I think sometimes I forget that and how powerful that is. So thank you.
Wonderful, Alba. Was it easier for you to come up with metaphors and things like that? Because that's for some people it's very difficult. But I think that for Latinos, we it's so common for us. So I don't know.
Yes, but I had to remind myself because I go back, when you're working with so many different cultures and just, you do have to think about it a little bit more. And even though my partner Beatriz, she was Latina, but it's just my natural like instinct is just to keep it more general. So I think I'm going to be more aware of that when working with Latino populations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alba.
We also spoke about pacing.
Ooh.
When you're presenting and you're applying, sometimes it depends on the rapport that you've established with your clients. You might need a little bit more time for them to kind of gather their thoughts and reflect versus, if you get a client like me, like you're supposed to help me like right now.
Exactly. But it's interesting, Sira, because that's exactly right. And when you work with emotions, sometimes people take time to process it, and sometimes they go blank and they start reflecting upon it, and it takes a while. And we have to give them space so that can happen, right? So then they can say, "Oh, you know what? That is true," but it takes a while. So we have to be very careful and give them that space.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give a chance to Nikesha. I think wants to address something. Nikesha.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was saying that it was a good exercise. I think we kind of talked about how it didn't feel natural. Like it was harder for me to think of something in the moment versus if I was actually with a client and it was like our own conversation. But in terms of the skills, I think that sometimes as therapists or, clinicians or whatever, we like to play it safe, and the heightening it's kind of like a risky thing, but I feel like it would give you more feedback from the client. And we should, I guess, embrace the risk taking and be okay with being wrong if we get it wrong. But I think we kind of stay on the safer side, and that's why we don't really use the heightening and the metaphors and everything else.
That's true. Thank you, Nikesha. And you know, some research studies have found exactly that when therapists engage in this kind of heightening and in the emotion, they themselves go through a lot of emotions to process in themselves because they're like in the fire, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. I want to give a chance to other participants to speak around the exercise and the conversation. Before that, I shared the evaluation links in case as we dialogue, if you can fill that out, we highly appreciate it. So let's go on to, now the hands were raised down, but if anyone else wishes to, Dr. Ana Irizarry.
Unmute. Oh, great. It just let me unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Dr. Sira, thank you for mentioning what we discussed in our group. I just, two things came up for me. And the first thing was, sometimes when we go into session mode, especially those that are seasoned like me, I've been 30 years in this profession, I find that my brain automatically goes into problem solving mode. And this was a great example, a reminder that sometimes I just need to be with, even if I don't have to resolve the issue at that moment, but I just need to be with that person and be as present as possible, because that's the only way I'm able to reflect and do a heightening, response that is going to be appropriate, and sit with them when they start to reflect on their own things. When I was talking to Sarah, she was talking about some issues that she was having as an administrator, and then she told me something that was happening to her personally, and I said, well, do you think that these two may be connected one way or another? And that is not going to happen unless I, am able to sit with it being okay not to solve their problem at that moment. Yep. And I find that that's one of my biggest challenges being in this profession so long, is that I forget the first step in relationship building. I mean, in social work, is relationship building, rapport building. So yeah, that was my response.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to give opportunity to Sandra to speak as well. Sandra.
Hi. Hi. Oh, thank you. I love the exercise. So I think, like the other participants were saying, I also got stuck on the heightening part because I really wanted to solve the problem. But I was able to kind of differentiate, is this really coming out of sadness, or is it really angry? And my partner was like, no, this was really me being angry. So that was really good that she was able to clarify that. So I love the exercise, and yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sandra.
These are such great, wonderful and great points of everyone as practitioners, holding the space, being present, working through and with emotion. I'm looking at the chat and the raised hands to see if anyone else might like to add a comment or share their experience. Seeing a lot of also comments around, I have the experience at the end, I struggle not to provide solutions, right? So sometimes we feel that we want to find solutions right away, and that holding space is so important. And so reminding everyone, as anyone else might want to ask a final question, I've shared through the chat our evaluation. I can share the screen again maybe and show that up so you can also see our website and our links to our website. So let me go ahead and do that. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day today. And I think I also share my email address just in case any of you have any other questions. You can feel free to contact me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jimenez, for this such a wonderful. And I think again, going back to the experience, right? Very experiential, very process oriented, and so this is our links for evaluation. Also, you can follow us on either of those platforms. We hope to see you again. We hope to receive your feedback, and we welcome you again always to these dialogue sessions.